Story 1: Church in the Woods. I've been a long-time lurker here, but being snowed in gave me the time and nerve to finally share the creepiest thing that ever happened to me. This isn't fiction. This is real. I grew up in rural Ohio, in the 1970 seconds. My best friend Joe lived on a big farm that bordered a dense forest, and we practically grew up in those woods. Every weekend I'd get dropped off at his place, and we'd disappear until school started again. We built forts, made fires, caught frogs, all the stuff kids did before video games took over. By the time we hit high school, Stand By Me had just come out, and we got the genius idea to recreate it minus the dead body. We'd walk the railroad tracks that cut through the country, camp near the bridges, fish, and live like outlaws for a few days. It was risky, but we were teenagers. That was the point. Those trips were some of the best times of my life. We'd dodge trains, cook over fires, and sleep under the stars. Never had a problem, not once. Years went by. Life happened. Joe and I both moved away, but stayed in touch. In the mid-90 seconds, we both ended up back home for about a week. Most nights we'd sit around his fire pit, drink beer, and talk about the old days. One night, after a few too many, nostalgia got the best of us. We decided to do it again, one last rail walk. My wife thought we'd lost it, but agreed to drop us off at our old starting spot. When she drove off, Joe grinned and said, "Let's take the opposite direction this time, just to mix it up." We had a map, good weather, and bad judgment, so we went for it. The day was perfect. We followed the tracks, smoked a joint on a bridge, laughed about high school drama. As the sun started to dip, we picked a spot to camp a section of the track surrounded by thick woods. The trees were so dense, it felt like a tunnel. Before setting up our hammocks, we decided to scout the area, an old habit from our camping days. We climbed a small hill to make sure we weren't setting up near someone's property. From the top, we spotted something strange, a structure sitting in a dip about 100 yards into the trees. At first, we thought it was an old sugar shack. There were no lights, no road, no signs of life. Just a dark, sagging building swallowed by the forest. Curiosity won. We hiked closer. When we finally got near enough to see clearly, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a shack. It was a church, small, crooked, and so weathered the wood had turned nearly black. The cross on top was still there, but it leaned to one side. The windows were empty holes. The doors, long gone. We peeked through one of the openings. Rows of pews sat covered in leaves and dust, and a raised platform stood at the front. Everything was silent. No footprints, no trails, no tire marks, just emptiness. We didn't go in. We didn't have to. Something about the air in there felt wrong. We climbed back up the hill, set up camp, and tried to shake it off. Having that hill between us and the church made us feel better, but neither of us could relax. That night, lying in our hammocks, we talked quietly mostly about how creepy that church was. Then, right in the middle of our conversation, we heard something. "Do you hear that?" Joe whispered. It sounded faint at first, distant and echoing, but unmistakable. Singing, low, rhythmic, and definitely coming from the direction of the church. We slipped out of our hammocks and crouched down, listening. The melody grew clearer. It sounded like church hymns, but different. The language wasn't English. We crept up the hill without flashlights, relying on the dim moonlight. When we reached the top, we saw a flickering glow spilling from inside the church. Candlelight. We crouched behind a fallen tree, watching in disbelief. Shadows moved inside, tall, human silhouettes swaying as they sang. The sound was deep and mournful, like some kind of chant. Then the singing stopped. A single, booming male voice started speaking, shouting words we couldn't understand. It echoed through the trees like thunder. The voice would pause, and a chorus of others would answer, singing in unison. Then came this long, drawn-out wail, dozens of voices merging into one horrific, rising scream that tore through the night. I clamped my hands over my ears. When it finally stopped, the silence was worse. That's when Joe hissed, "They're coming out." We watched as a line of figures began filing out of the church, all holding hands. A few had flashlights, their beams swinging wildly as they started moving toward the hill toward us. That was all we needed. We grabbed our packs and bolted, crashing through the woods back to the tracks. We didn't stop running until the church was far behind us. When we finally looked back, we saw the lights, dozens of them moving down the hill, jittering through the trees like a swarm of fireflies. We ran until we hit a road and followed it to a gas station in a nearby town. My wife picked us up an hour later, shaking her head the whole way home. Everyone said it was probably teenagers messing around, but I know what I heard. Those voices weren't kids. And that chanting? That wasn't something normal people do in the middle of the woods. That night still creeps me out, even decades later. I've camped in a lot of places, but I'll never go back there. Some things in the woods are better left undiscovered. Story 2. My grandparents on both sides converted to fundamentalism when my parents were teens. My parents met at church. My mom got pregnant with me, so wedding bells. And here I am. I was literally in church the Sunday after I was born. So was my mom. After an emergency C-section. Absolute queen, but also ouch. We eventually switched to an independent fundamental Baptist church. If you've ever gone to one in Canada or the northern US, hit me up. There's a solid chance we know someone in common. Fast forward. I'm in my early 20s now, and I officially left Christianity last summer, around the same time I got married. Shout out to my amazing husband, who's actually in this subreddit. Love you, babe. Since then, I've been exploring a mix of Buddhism, spirituality, witchcraft, and humanism. Naturally, my parents are horrified. The church I grew up in had its own private Christian school and college in the same building, all run by the same staff. I was homeschooled though, because apparently that still wasn't strict enough. We only used the KJV Bible, even at home. No pants, no short skirts, no makeup until I was 15. My parents are still offended by my shorts, crop tops, colorful makeup, secular music, and the fact that I follow gay creators on Instagram. Looking back, I'm just glad I stayed kind and independent. If I hadn't been naturally empathetic and stubborn, that place would have broken me like it did so many others. When I was 11, I went to a youth conference where a 50-something preacher decided to teach all the girls about modesty, his actual words. "I see you little harlots batting your eyelashes and wiggling your little fans." Then he literally turned around and wiggled his butt at a room full of children. He went on to say that we were there to learn how to be good wives and not distract the boys because the devil wanted to use us. Yeah, that was a real sermon. At Bible camp that same year, the head cook, a grown woman, sat down all 60 of us girls, ages 10-12, lifted up her skirt to show her underwear, and said she was tired of seeing that from us. Her reasoning? The boys are here to learn. You're here to learn to be modest wives. When I was 15, I got in trouble for telling a boy what a period was. He kept pressuring me to go swimming, and I said I couldn't because of my period. I just didn't want to. Somehow, that became a scandal. The male cabin inspector found my unused pads and told me they were gross and he shouldn't have to see them in a teen girls' cabin. I complained so hard that the next year, they replaced him with a woman. Small win. I didn't dare tell my parents, though they'd have taken his side. So yeah, that's just the start. If people actually enjoy this post, I'll share more stories from my childhood inside the Fundy bubble.